Okay, this is how to access your individual asTTle logins for your classes. So this little video can be shown to the class. It'll steps them through it. So they go to Safari, and it is probably best for Safari for reasons that I won't go into now, just the way the browser works. And you just Google asTTle, asTTle. The first hit that comes up will be student login, and here we want to have this person I've done before, so it's memorized that one, and they've already generated a password, and so I'm just going to sign in to her name. There, clearly it's Malaba Grammar School, so if you got previous schools, it will be able to be either Kowhai Intermediate, it can have those as well, but in this case here let's just stick to Malaba Grammar School. And then the first menu that comes up is a sit test one. We don't need to use that one because we don't sit any tests online. We actually do all of our testing on paper. So the reports that you get from the tests you've done at Malaba Grammar School include individual learning pathways report, that one there. And if you did any tests in earlier years, you can go back to them and work out what happened with that year. So if we check back on that one, term 4 2013, we can load that one up. It's loading up at the moment, and that will come up, and then we can see what happened there. So you've got 2 or 3 years. This is a girl that's left school now, and she was well above average. I'm just take you through what each one of these little profiles means, so you've got a bit of an idea. So if we look first of all at the speedos here at the top, these speedos, this we'll just use a pen actually to point them out. That speedo there, alright, self-efficacy reading. The end of the year I always use a sort of a series of questions inside the front cover which looks at how well they rate themselves about their effectiveness in their reading. Now this lady here was actually a very talented lady, but she didn't have a good impression about her effectiveness as a reader, and so the speedo dial, the red dial, is actually well down in the mean for the country at the time the test was taken. However, the other 3 indicators, the speedo is well past the average, so it indicates that she's better at processes and strategies, better at ideas, and better at structure, which were the 3 that we used in that test. We use 3 slightly different ones now, but that's what the speedos means, and the evidence for that numerically and sub-level wise is these bits and pieces underneath here. So this one, overall the student is 1607. They say it's a little bit notional because it's a plus or minus 22. The surface features a 1622 and the deep features a 1593. So what they're saying here is that this kid is actually quite a good kid. For this test would have been the end of their year 9 year, I think. Yeah, I think end of year 9. So they're actually pretty good if they're if they're that quality by then. The difference between surface and deep, of course, is that the surface is their ability to read some text and to literally take ideas that are in the text and able to be almost cut out of the text and included in the answer. But the deep level is their ability to read a blob of text and then see what's kind of suggested in the text, to see what the ideas are that have been inferred in there. So it's a little bit of a slightly different skill. This one here, processes and strategies, is how they go about approaching text. What do they do? Do they skim through it first if it's a non-fiction text, or do they just, guess, basically? And obviously this girl's got some skills that she uses to do, to follow a bit of a strategy here, and the evidence is in the test that she's doing that, given the fact that she's well ahead of the national Year 9 mean. Ideas, same thing. How well can she read a blob of text and pick the key ideas out of it? And again below here, the mean for the whole country at that time, October 2013, was 1520, but she is 1597, so she's well ahead of where the average for the country is. And similarly for structure, their ability to pluck structure out and identify how texts are structured, she's got a really good score there as well. Now this one here, this one causes a little bit of confusion, but in fact it's not too tricky really. It just gives you, it's what they call an individual learning profile, and it's divided into 4 quartiles. Now these quartiles, I'll just take this one out a little bit so that you can see the whole of the quartiles here, and I'll just take that just up a little fraction. Now this side here, the left hand side, that is everything that in the test that they got correct, and everything on the right hand side is everything that they got wrong. So here, what does it mean by achieved and what does it mean by strengths? Well, achieved means that the test has been designed to be at the level that this person is actually currently comprehending text at. And clearly they've actually got good evidence that they can correctly understand and work out from information presented. What's the evidence? That's these 3 little numbers in brackets, because they're the actual specific question numbers that she's got correct, which is addressing that particular indicator. Same for here. Make a conclusion or assumption. 3 numbers in brackets afterwards tell us that there's good evidence that she can do those things. Similarly, this one here, these are yellow and they're a strength because these questions are slightly above the area that they're functioning at, slightly higher. In this case here, we've got 2 questions that provide us evidence that she can correctly understand and work out information presented. So whenever the items get harder than this one down here, she's still able to approach it and answer it with some degree of confidence, because there's 2 items of evidence that tell us that she can do that at a level slightly above the level that she's actually currently perceived to be functioning at. This side here, similar in a sense, they except they've got them wrong. So these ones are the questions they've got wrong, and we didn't expect them to get them wrong. These ones here is they've got them wrong and we did expect them to get them incorrect. But here she hasn't got much evidence because there's only 1 little number in brackets, and that means that asTTle allows for people to make the odd mistake. Similarly down here in the gaps, you know, it says here 1 and 12, make a conclusion or an assumption. She's got a couple of gaps over there, but on this side she's actually got 3 that provide us with evidence that she can do that. So sometimes she can and sometimes she can't. So that's the individual learning profile, and this little barometer in the middle is just giving inside this ellipse where her asTTle reading score sits. So generally speaking it's just over 1600 from there, and that's where they've placed this little red flattened circle called an ellipse. The national mean for the country is down here, and so that gives you a pretty good idea of where she sits in the system. Now if I go back here, I go back to reports page again, and I look at the individual question analysis, and I'm going to look at a different test here. I'm listed the test that she did at the end of 2000, and in fact I'm going to change the year and I go to 2014. No, that's the one. Okay, so we'll look at that one there. This is actually quite good because it drills down a bit deeper for your testing, because this time it's going to show the actual questions that were asked and your answers to them, and that's actually quite useful. It also got the strands that are the question is drawn from. Sometimes a question will be addressing 2 of those strands, ideas, in this case language features, and so here this kid's got quite a lot of the test wrong, and the ones that they've got incorrect are largely these ones that as they get more difficult, and that tells us that the test was reasonably well sat for them, because that's what's supposed to happen if the test has been set up for her correctly. Okay, so we'll come back here, come back to reports again. The last one's the student results summary. In this case over here I'm going to stick with reading, but you can look at writing, you can look at mathematics. But this one over here says that here's a kid, this kid's now left the school I think. Let's see, 14, 15, 16, no, she's in year 13 this year. So this is just for teachers, so I'm sure she won't mind. So this actually gives us a really good idea of how they've tracked over time. A little bit flat here at Ko-Fi Intermediate, but she's picked up when she's come into secondary school, so that by the end of term 4 of 2014, her year 10 year, she's actually up to 5A, which is well ahead of where she should be. Now the interesting thing that you can do is you can take this test here at the end of 2014 and that one there, and you can look at a progress report, and I'll make a little graph of how her progress has been panning against the country as a mean. So in this case here, she was already above. She was at the whisker end, the top end of the whisker, because she was above that there. But by the end of year 10, it looks to me as if she might have dropped down a little bit, but not by very much, because the whisker, the majority here, the 50% in the middle, has actually come up a little bit, because people across the countryside have made a little bit of an improvement. So that's a really interesting one for kids to have a look their own progress with that, because it enables them to monitor how they're doing as an individual compared to the rest of the country who sat that same test. And that's really comparing year 9 and year 10 over all clusters, right across everyone that's done an asTTle test pretty much from October 2013 to October 2014. So quite a good one, really. Now, if they come back here and go back to reports again, and they want to have a look at the results summary for writing or mathematics, they can also do that. So that just about summarises how they go about accessing asTTle individual profiles for them.